The River Clyde. Our story begins with 3 small fishing villages which grew in the banks of the River Clyde. Gourock was one such village which developed through the fishing industry. Such industry also created the need for the industry to build and repair boats. Greenock, also dependent on the fishing industry, they exported salted and cured herring and salmon hides to France and Holland. Herring was the principal one and continued to be until the end of the 17th century. Newark was the third of the fishing villages which was to become Port Glasgow. There was a dense forest between Greenock and Port Glasgow which separated them until 1768 when a road was built. Port Glasgow was created in the 17th century as a port for Glasgow merchants to offload their merchandise and take it to Glasgow. As trade grew, the shipbuilding industry required bigger ships and more wood to construct them. Port Glasgow became the principal port on the Clyde for the importation of North American timber. Timber had been arriving since the 16th century from Norway and the Baltic. Yellow pine was imported from Miramichi, but by the 19th century whole logs were being imported. Timber measuring was an extensive and for long a lucrative business. The measurers rented the timber ponds which stretched from Port Glasgow to Langbank. At the present time, the ponds are derelict and only worn posts remain. These wooden logs were seasoned so that shipbuilders could manipulate the wood into shape for building ships. The timber ships required other industries to support them, such as sail making and rope works, the first of these being the Gourock rope works, which expanded into Port Glasgow. Over time, larger vessels required graving docks and wet docks, which was the first of its kind in Scotland and closed the Bay of Newark. The area at the foot of John Wood Street was the original destination for the oldest dry dock in Scotland, which was erected in 1776 and engineered by James Watt. Shipyards began to appear. Scottish Yard in Greenock was the oldest family-owned shipbuilding business in the world. It began in 1711. In 1760 they built a brig for the West India trade, which is said to be the first square-rigged vessel built on the Clyde. The last wooden ship built in this district was by Scott and Company in Greenock in 1859. The first mention of any shipbuilder in Port Glasgow is in 1780, about which time Thomas McGill opened a yard, which is now part of the ground owned by Ferguson's. These shipyards were at the forefront of shipbuilding technology, where the first commercial steamship was built. In 1811, Henry Bell, a hotelier from Dumbarton, went to visit John Wood, a Port Glasgow shipbuilder who agreed to build a 45-foot wooden paddle steamer, which became famous around the world as PS Comet. The Comet became known as the mother of the British steamship. Passengers were shuttled between Glasgow, Greenock and Helensburgh, but for the business to become more profitable, the Comet was extended by 20 foot. But competition had grew and there were now 20 competitors. Returning to Glasgow from Inverness one December day 1820, the Comet was lifted onto the rocks at Craignish Point near Oban and wrecked. Her engine was salvaged and used to drive machinery at a brewery, but in 1862 it was rescued and bought by the great engineer Robert Napier, who presented it to the Science Museum in London. In 1962, shipyard apprentices built a replica of the PS Comet and it was launched from Lithgow's East Yard, which now sits in Port Glasgow Civic Square. The age of steam heralded new approaches to shipbuilding, and soon the shipyards in Port Glasgow, Greenock and Gourock were building ships powered by steam and built from steel. In the 1800s, hundreds of carpenters were employed in Port Glasgow shipbuilding yards, besides a number of apprentices and labourers. The carpenters were a skilled body of men, and mostly Scotch. As wooden shipbuilding changed slowly into iron, they rather foolishly refused to work with the new material, and the labourers became the riveters, platers, etc. New industries also grew foundries to work the steel for the shipyards. Railways were being constructed at the time, and in March 1841 the Glasgow, Paisley and Greenock Railway was open to traffic. the railways began expanding to deliver coal and raw materials, which would drive the shipbuilding industry. In the late 1800s, the shipbuilding firms in the area experienced a boost as many yards received naval contracts in the run-up to the First World War. Scott's Yard in Greenock built the first super dreadnought in 1909. James Lisco, who took control of the family-owned business in 1908, was responsible for the management of nation's shipbuilding in 2 world wars. Many of the shipyards were booming through this period, and the Old West Kirk Church was in the area next to the harbours. In 1926 the church was moved so that the Harland and Wolff shipyards could expand. The church was moved to its present site in the Esplanade. In the 1930s there was a post-war depression and many industries and businesses went into receivership. James Lisco had to defend the policy of rationalisation, which meant buying shipyards in order to close them down to reduce the national capacity. Much needed shipbuilding and employment was brought to the area with the Second World War. Shipbuilding on the river also attracted the attention of the Luftwaffe, and Port Glasgow, Greenock and Uruk were bombed over 2 nights on May the 6th and May the 7th, 1941. The shipyard suffered some structural damage, but many people lost their lives as the shelters were covered during the Blitz. Post-war years seen a boom in the shipbuilding and many people entered employment through the shipyards.
I started in Scots when I was 17 years of age, and to me it was the worst job in my lifetime. I can remember getting up in the morning, walking from West Stewart Street to start work at 20 minutes to 8. If you were a minute late, the gates were shut on you and you were quartered. You were allowed 2 quarters in a week, and after that you were sent home. You didn't go back to work for the rest of that week. I can remember the cold mornings going there, and the wind, and the rain, the snow and the ice, and all these things. I'm laughing just now, but it wasn't much of a laugh then. Aye, you touched the horn rails going up the gangway, and your horns were sticking to the rails with the coal and the ice. It was an awful dangerous job as well, not only for me, for everybody in the years, because there was no health and safety or anything like that. There was no hard hats rather, and no gloves, no leather gloves for handling the metal. There was no masks if you were working alongside painters or anything like that. You had to breathe in all these fumes.
Most shipyards coped well in the interwar and immediate post-war years, but could not compete with cheap labour abroad. More pressing, the yards survived, consolidating such as Scots and Lithgows joined forces to become Scott Lithgows in 1967. At that time they employed 7,000 workers.
John Anderson. I was a charter and electrician in Lithgow's Kingston Yard, Port Glasgow. I worked in Lithgow's Kingston Yard for 20 years. I was an electrician in there, served my time in there as 5 years as an apprentice. Funny thing is, when I left school, I was in high home school, and I was 14 I left. And my father got me an interview with a manager called Mr. Morton in the Kingston. And I was to go and Monday morning look for Mr. Morton. I would find him no bother because he had a bowler hat.
Right.
See? So I goes away doing, and everybody's got a bowler hat. So I went round the wall asking who's Mr. Morton. So they pointed the man out to me, and I went to him and I said, I'm sent to you for a job. He says, what do you want to be? I said, I want to be a painter. Okay. He says, you're young for a painter yet. You need to wait till you're 16 before you start your apprenticeship. I says, okay. So he put me up in what they call the power station, and I made the tea, looked after the riveters and the caulkers machines. I was to take them in at night, put them in